So I want you to picture a place that's defined almost uh, almost entirely by its landscape. You've got these incredible waterfalls. You have actual dinosaur fossils just embedded in the rock.
Right, in the foothills of the Rockies.
Exactly. And it's a community where the idea of locking your front door just feels, well, it feels foreign.
It does.
That's Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. It's beautiful, it's isolated, and it's the kind of place where everybody knows everybody.
It really is that quintessential safe haven. I mean, you're talking about a town of what, maybe 2,400 people?
Roughly, yeah.
And that identity, that feeling of safety, that closeness where you wave at every car you pass, that's so crucial to understanding just how shattering the events of this last week have been.
Because that image of Tumbler Ridge, it hasn't just been damaged, it feels like it's been fundamentally altered.
It has.
We are, of course, talking about the events of Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. It's already being called one of the worst mass shootings in Canadian history.
It is an incredibly heavy topic, and we know how the news cycle works, right? It moves so fast.
It's a week out, and the headlines are already starting to fade.
Exactly. The cameras pack up. But our mission on this deep dive is to, stop the clock for a minute. We need to really unpack the specifics here.
Right.
We aren't just looking at the tragedy itself, but the mechanisms behind it. We're looking at missed warning signs, a really confusing paper trail with weapons, and the logistical nightmare of a community trying to heal when its high school is now a crime scene.
And just to ground us in the reality of this before we get into the how and the why, the numbers are just stark.
They are.
9 people killed, and that includes the shooter. Over 24 injured.
It's a staggering toll for a town of that size. I mean, if you scale that up to a city like Vancouver or Toronto, the numbers, they'd be unthinkable.
Thousands of casualties.
Right. And in Tumbler Ridge, those numbers mean almost no one is more than 1 degree of separation from a victim. Everyone there has lost a friend, a neighbor, a student.
It changes the texture of the grief, doesn't it? In a big city, a tragedy can feel anonymous. Here, these are the kids you see at the grocery store.
That's the devastating part. When you read through the reports, these aren't just names. I mean, take Abel Mwanza. He was only 12 years old.
His family moved from Zambia, right? In 2023.
Yeah. And there's this heartbreaking story from a family friend, a pastor back in Zambia named Christopher Bwalya.
I read this.
Apparently, before Abel left for Canada, he made a promise to Christopher. He said, "I will never lose my Zambian accent."
And what, a few months later?
3 months later, it was gone. Christopher said he just teased him about it. He adapted that quickly. He was described as a total people person, a kid who loved science, just full of potential.
And that potential is just erased.
And then you have Kylie Smith, also 12. Her father called her a beautiful soul. She was into art, anime.
Just kids figuring out who they are.
Exactly, just on the cusp of it. And we have to talk about Maya Gabala. She's also 12, and as of right now, she's fighting for her life in a Vancouver hospital.
A severe brain injury, I read.
A severe brain injury. Her family shared a small update saying she's showing some movement on her left side. They're holding on to that. But the road ahead is, well, it's incredibly uncertain.
It's just a grim reminder that the injured statistic hides so much long-term trauma. Surviving doesn't mean it's over.
Not at all. For Maya and her family, this is day 1 of a very long marathon, and we can't forget the others we lost. Ezekiel Schofield, who was 13, Zoe Benoit, 12, Takaria Lampert, 12, and Shonda Avigana Durand, a 39-year-old educator at the school.
An entire cohort of kids.
Just devastating.
So let's walk through how this day unfolded, because the violence didn't actually start at the school.
No, it didn't. The timeline begins at a home about 1.6 kilometers away from Tumbler Ridge Secondary.
Okay.
That's where the shooter, 18-year-old Jesse Van Rutselaar, lived. Police believe the violence started right there. Van Rutselaar shot and killed their mother, Jennifer Jacobs, who was 39, and a half-brother, Emmett Jacobs.
Emmett was just 11.
Just 11, and then from there, moved to the school.
And this is where the police description of what happened gets really chilling.
It does. I mean, you often hear in these shootings about specific targets, right? Bullies, ex-partners, some kind of revenge narrative.
Yeah, a list.
But the RCMP deputy commissioner used a very specific word to describe Van Rutselaar's behavior in the hallways. He said the shooter was hunting.
Hunting. That's such a loaded word. It implies something calculated,
Yeah.
but also totally indiscriminate.
That's it. It sounds less like anger at a person and more like anger at, well, at everything.
At existence itself.
And that matches the profile we're starting to see. The investigation suggests there were no specific targets at the school. The shooter was engaging anyone they came across.
So it wasn't a revenge plot?
No. It was an attempt to inflict maximum casualties. Security footage reportedly shows the shooter firing a final burst of gunfire at just no one in particular before taking their own life.
Which leads us to the question that always comes up. Who was this person? And more importantly, were there signs? Because in hindsight, there are always signs.
In this case, the signs weren't just signs. They were blindingly bright neon lights.
So the shooter, Jesse Van Rooselaar, 18 years old.
18. A former student of the very school they attacked, but they had dropped out about 4 years ago.
Now, we do have to address the conversation that just exploded online almost immediately about the shooter's identity.
We do, because the internet jumps to conclusions. The police confirmed that Jesse was assigned male at birth, but began transitioning to female about 6 years ago.
And predictably, narratives popped up trying to link the violence directly to that identity.
Right, framing it as ideological. But we have to be really, really clear about what the experts are actually finding in the evidence.
Okay, so what does the data say? Is there a manifesto? A political motive?
The Institute for Strategic Dialogue, and they are the heavy hitters when it comes to tracking extremism, they analyzed the shooter's digital footprint thoroughly. They found zero evidence that the shooting was motivated by transgender identity or ideology. Zero.
So if it wasn't that, what does the profile look like? Because hunting implies some kind of motivation, even a warped one.
It leans much more toward what experts are calling nihilistic violence. It's less about a cause and more about a fascination with death itself. It's about the gamification of violence.
Which leads us to that digital footprint, which is, I looked into this, and it's deeply disturbing stuff.
It's dark. The shooter had an active account on a site called Watch People Die.
Which is exactly what it sounds like.
It is. Graphic, real-world violence. And this wasn't just, morbid curiosity. In the comments, Van Rooselaar described an addiction to gore.
They actually used the word addiction.
Yes. They wrote about an obsessive and compulsive draw to the content. They even questioned if it was destroying their mental health, but admitted they couldn't stop.
It's a feedback loop.
A total feedback loop of desensitization. On top of that, on the gaming platform Roblox, the shooter had created a game that simulated a mass shooting in a mall.
So you have the desensitization on one hand and the simulation of violence on the other. It's like they were rehearsing.
That's a fair assessment. It's practice. And then you look at the offline history, and the mental health picture is just as fractured.
This wasn't someone flying under the radar.
Not at all. The police had been to the Van Rooselaar home multiple times over several years.
Multiple times.
For known mental health concerns, self-harm issues, Jesse had been apprehended under the Mental Health Act at least twice.
So the system knew. The authorities were physically in that house. This wasn't a quiet kid that nobody noticed.
The system was aware, yes. And there's a tragic personal element, too. The biological father, Justin Van Rooselaar, he released a statement.
He was estranged, right?
Estranged. He said the mother had excluded him from Jesse's life, but he expressed this profound sorrow. He noted Jesse didn't even use his last name anymore.
It just paints a picture of a fractured home, severe mental illness, and this isolation that finds an outlet online.
In the darkest corners of the internet.
This brings us to the part of the story that I think is going to be the center of policy debate in Canada for a long, long time. The weapons. Because if you have a household with known mental health crises, police visits, apprehensions, how are there guns in that house?
This is the crux of the systemic failure argument. So let's look at the arsenal. At the home, police found an unregistered shotgun.
Unregistered, so illegal, off the books.
Correct. That was likely the weapon used on the mother and the half-brother. But then at the school, the shooter had a long gun and a modified handgun, or maybe a modified rifle.
Okay.
Now here's the twist. The thing that's causing so much scrutiny. Police had seized firearms from this home about 2 years ago.
Wait, they seized them, so the safety protocol actually worked, at least at first.
It worked in the first step. They saw the danger, they had safety concerns, and they removed the weapons.
Okay, but
the owner of the guns, the mother, Jennifer Jacobs, she successfully petitioned to get them back.
Hold on. She got them back. With a child in the house who had been apprehended under the Mental Health Act, how? How does a judge sign off on that?
That is the massive complexity in Canadian law, even with the new red flag laws from 2023.
How does that work?
Well, those laws are designed to remove firearms from people who pose a threat. But the person flagged as the threat, Jessie, wasn't the legal owner of the guns.
The mother was.
The mother was. She wasn't deemed the threat. So she argued for her property rights. She probably argued she could keep them secured away from Jessie.
Right.
And she won.
That feels like a gargantuan loophole. If you live with someone who is a known danger, shouldn't that disqualify the whole household?
You would think so. That's
Okay.
likely where the public inquiry will focus. It's this friction between individual property rights and collective safety. But it gets even murkier.
Wow.
The police have admitted that the main weapon used at the school, the one that did the most damage, has an unknown origin.
Unknown origin. What does that even mean?
It means it wasn't part of that first seizure. It wasn't registered to the mother. They have no idea where it came from.
So the shooter got a gun from somewhere else entirely.
It seems so. The shooter did have a PL, a firearms license, but it expired in 2024. So we have this situation where known guns were returned, but a completely different unknown weapon was the primary tool for the attack.
It's terrifying.
Hmm.
It's like the system was looking at one hand while the other hand was doing something completely different.
It raises that really uncomfortable question. Even if the mother hadn't gotten her guns back, would this have been prevented?
The unknown weapon suggests maybe not.
It suggests that if someone is that determined and has slipped through every social safety net, the regulatory ones might not be enough to stop them.
So now Tumbler Ridge is left to pick up the pieces. We talked about the geography. Small town. The high school is a crime scene. Where do the kids even go?
You can't send them back in there.
No. Not into that hallway where their friends died.
And that's the decision the school board and the community made. Students cannot return to Tumbler Ridge Secondary. Not yet. A victim advocate, Anita Brush, she put it perfectly. No kid can learn in fear.
So what's the solution? You can't just stop school.
Portables. The province is trucking in 14 portable classrooms. They're setting them up at the local elementary school to create a sort of temporary high school campus.
But this isn't like setting up a trailer in a parking lot in Vancouver. This is northern BC in February.
Exactly. This is an extreme environment. You don't just drop a trailer. You need water, heating, sewage, furniture. And as this is all happening, there's a winter storm warning.
Of course there is.
Wind chills are hitting -40.
-40. That's the kind of cold where machinery just stops working.
It is. And they're expecting up to 25 centimeters of snow on top of that. So you have crews out there battling hypothermia conditions, trying to connect plumbing that freezes instantly just to give these kids a place to go.
I can't even imagine the physical toll of that, let alone the emotional one.
Yeah.
It feels like the universe is just piling on.
It's immense. But this is where you start to see that Tumbler Ridge strong spirit kicking in. You know, it's becoming a rallying cry.
A brand.
Yeah. And support is flooding in. Therapy dogs, grief counselors. Prime Minister Mark Carney even canceled a trip to the Munich Security Conference to visit the town.
That's a big deal. Munich is a major global security summit.
It is. Canceling sends a message. It says, this is the security crisis that matters to us right now. And on a local level, I saw the hockey team is back on the ice.
Of course they are. The hockey rink is the town square in a place like that.
It's the church, the meeting hall, everything. The team is skating for the victims, trying to keep those routines alive. Routine is a massive part of trauma recovery.
It's amazing how sports can do that. It gives you something else to focus on, even just for an hour.
Precisely. But as Anita Bush warned, we have to be realistic. Even with the portables, the counselors, there will be fear. Parents are scared. Kids are scared. Healing isn't a straight line, and the trauma of being hunted leaves a scar that safety drills can't fix.
Okay, so let's step back for a second. We've covered the victims, the shooter, the weapons, the recovery. When you look at this whole awful picture, what are we really seeing?
I think we're seeing a collision of untreated, severe mental health issues that were known to authorities, a digital life that fed an addiction to violence, and a regulatory system that, for all its red flag laws, failed to account for the nuance of a dangerous person living in a home with legal guns.
And the scariest part is that on paper, some of those protocols, they worked. Police visited, guns were seized, boxes were checked.
And that's the hardest pill to swallow. The protocols functioned as written, but they failed in practice. They didn't account for the persistence of the threat or or the rights of the gun owner over the safety of the household.
So for you listening, whether you're in a big city or a small town like Tumbler Ridge, this isn't just a news story. It's a case study on safety. We rely on lockdowns, buzzers, background checks.
But this shooter knew the layout. This was the terrifying reality of the insider threat. You can lock the doors to keep strangers out, but what do you do when the danger comes from a former student who slipped through all the cracks? The buzzers don't help.
It leaves us with a lot to think about. We often talk about red flag laws as if they're a silver bullet. Just flag the dangerous people and we're safe.
But look at the evidence here. We flagged the threat, we seized the guns, and yet the weapon that did the most damage at the school had unknown origins.
And that's the thought I want to leave everyone with today. If a system can flag a threat, seize weapons, but still miss the one that matters most, or fail to prevent them from getting a new one, what does red flag legislation actually achieve in practice?
It's a question we have to answer.
The question we need to answer before the next Tumbler Ridge happens. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Take care of each other out there.